Let's talk to Harry Phibbs, columnist at Conservative Home. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning.
I don't think I'm being too hard on Keir Starmer, describing him as a complete and utter failure for the British people. We find out that not only did he leave Southport without talking to the local people there, who could have well done with a word of advice or, even a reassuring word or a pat on the shoulder or something, did he rush back to London only to appear at a fundraising party for Labour.
Oh, this is a new low for Starmer. We've talked about over the last 6 months about all sorts of failings, all the free gear and putting up tax and destroying jobs and all broken promises and lots of political failure. But no, there's something exceptionally sickening about this story and the way that he's behaved and the way that we've been lied to and the cynicism. It's partly the way that it's insulting to our intelligence.
Yeah. Because
if you're going to have somebody who's going to tell lies and they just don't care, even though they're going to get, and it's not that hard for the journalists to get to the bottom of some of these things, that eventually the truth will come out. And they just seem to care. They don't care. They just seem to think, oh well, we'll get away with it. It's absolutely despicable and appallingly arrogant, and I just don't know how we can get by with another 4 years of it.
Well, my opinion, as I say very often to anyone who would care to listen, is that I don't think they'll last 4 years. People say to me, yeah, but there's no mechanism by which to get rid of them. I think there will be. I think there will be some cataclysmic event which forces an early election on this particular government, because they are so awful at what they are doing. I don't think I've ever seen a more inefficient government, a more callous government, a more unprepared government, and a more reckless government. And every single thing they touch seems to turn to what can only be described as the opposite of what Midas used to do when he turned everything into gold. I mean, only yesterday we saw a story in the Times, Rachel Reeves to relax non-dom tax rule amid millionaire exodus. They've discovered that their ludicrous non-dom tax sort of introduction has meant that 11,000 of Britain's wealthiest people have literally left the country. So they're now going, maybe that was a bad idea. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to water down the tax on non-doms, and we're actually going to let them stay here, and we promise we won't tax them any more than we were already. A complete U-turn, a complete reverse ferret, a complete and utter betrayal of what they said they wanted to do.
Oh yeah, I mean the non-doms. What it means is that if you're a non-dom, that you pay tax on the money that you earn in Britain, and then if you've got financial interests, if you own a company abroad, then you've got the option of paying the tax on your earnings abroad in the country where that money's being earned. A perfectly reasonable arrangement. And if we've got foreigners here, they don't. They're perfectly. If they're rich foreigners, they don't need to stay here. It's perfectly easy for them to move to another country, and therefore it's not that surprising that a measure like this going after them will actually reduce the tax revenue, because if you've got these rich, successful people who are told, well, we don't want you here, they say, well, fair enough then, I'll spend however many days it needs to be in another country and pay lower tax. And therefore going to war on the non-doms, saying, oh, these rich foreigners, let's go after them, is completely counterproductive. It ends up reducing the tax revenue, and then it suddenly dawns on them, and they think, we better try and do a U-turn, which probably won't be enough of a U-turn to deal with the problem. And in any case, the message goes out across the world: Britain is hostile to success. Britain is hostile to enterprise, and that is there's some politics of envy involved, and let's attack the rich, but it's utterly self-defeating. I mean, it means that this idea of the government wants economic growth is a complete joke. The growth, of course, has collapsed if you put out an anti-enterprise message.
Well, exactly right. And I mean, we've spent the last week watching the Donald Trump sort of train absolutely steamrolling over everything. You know, he started off as he means to continue. He shut the borders. He started deporting people. People have started leaving America who were not supposed to be there in the first place. He's decided to get rid of net zero. He's quit the climate Paris Accords. He's been talking to people about bringing in trillions and trillions of dollars into the country for investment purposes. Only yesterday he had a conversation with Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia, who's pledged something like 600 billion for an investment fund. He doesn't need to be in Davos, but he spoke to them yesterday. You know, we seem more and more like an isolated little island somewhere off the coast of Europe that nobody cares about. You know, Donald Trump still hasn't had a conversation with Keir Starmer. It's now Friday. He became president on Monday. I think this is probably the longest, you may know this better than me, the longest period of time since a new president has come in without talking to a British Prime Minister.
I think that would be right. Normally it would be at least maybe not a visit, but they'd be, you know, they've got things called telephones, which you've had for some time, and normally they'd make a call pretty quickly. But the net zero thing is a huge factor. I mean, I can't remember the exact figures, but you see a table of how much the energy costs in Britain compared to other countries, and it's exponentially more. It's not just sort of 10%, 20% more. It's, you know, twice as much, 3 times as much that we're paying for our energy bills as the Americans. And we've got Keir Starmer's cut the winter fuel allowance, but a much bigger factor is the basic energy bills that people are paying is much higher, and of course that's also for business, the cost of business, and what Donald Trump is doing is he's actually going to free up the energy production in America. They're going to be producing more energy. Yeah. They'll have cheaper energy, and so that gap is going to widen. But as you say, it's not just the gap between America. All around the world, people are now seeing that this net zero thing is a complete folly. The alarmism that the planet's coming to an end is nonsense. And so in other countries, we've got the elections coming up in Germany. We're seeing what will happen in Canada. The net zero folly is being completely abandoned. It was never really credible. It never really took off in countries like India and countries in Africa. And so we in a completely futile way with Ed Miliband are going to be impoverishing ourselves with no benefit to the environment whatsoever.
Yeah. Ed Miliband, of course, who yesterday declared that even if Rachel Reeves presses ahead with her plan to get a third runway at Heathrow, he will not resign from the government because he feels that it's more important for him to stay in his position, even though it will be a completely indefensible position because he's against a third runway at Heathrow.
Oh, it's humiliating for Ed Miliband. It's a complete contradiction. We need to expand airport travel. I would actually like Boris Johnson's idea of the Thames estuary.
I quite like that idea as well.
You can certainly argue that Heathrow, they call it a 1940s planning area, that to have all the planes flying across the city is and then of course there'd be the advantage that if we moved Heathrow Airport, then we could have tens of thousands of houses. There could be a new London borough of Heathrow. So you know that's an argument about where you have it. But absolutely, we need to be if you're going to have economic growth, people need to be able to travel, and we need to look at ways of expanding airports and of course, if people are going to have the miserablism of net zero, then of course that contradicts economic growth, and air travel is just an example of that.
Yeah, absolutely right. Harry, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Harry Phibbs, columnist at Conservative Home, talking to us about the state of this government, which is not good. It's not in good shape at all.